Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I'm seeing people sign on and we'll welcome our friends as they arrive. But really excited to have you here for this month's Let's See You Well presentation. I'm pleased to welcome employees, students, community members. I'm Erin Cunningham Ritter, representing the College of Arts and Sciences Be Well program, and I am pleased to welcome you to this Let's See You event titled Speak Vocal Empowerment for Students and Educators, featuring Dr. Chelsea Hackett. Let me move this slide forward. Okay. So before we begin, please note that closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcription button in the menu bar. This session will be recorded and we've built in time for question and answers at the end of today's presentation. Also, Dr. Hackett has requested cameras on if you are willing and able during this session. I'll invite everyone to check out more wellness resources, research, and workshops at our website. And now I am pleased to introduce our Let's See You Well expert of the month. Chelsea Hackett is the co-founder of and executive director of Speak, a nonprofit that focuses on vocal empowerment for women and girls. In addition, she is an adjunct professor, interdisciplinary artist, researcher, and creative consultant based in Boulder. She completed her doctorate in educational theater at New York University, where her research focused on a partnership between MAIA Impact, a Guatemalan all-girls school, and an all-female Maya theater company called Ajujin. For 8 years, Chelsea was a professional development coach and teaching artist in New York City, working across all 5 boroughs. In this capacity, she worked in over 50 different schools, teaching workshops on literacy through Story Pirates, teaching anti-bullying workshops through the New York City Children's Theater, training teachers to integrate art into special needs education through the Everyday Arts and Special Education program, and training teachers to use art as a tool for emerging English speakers with urban arts. In addition, she's an actress, writer, and director trained in New York City and worked around the world. She is passionate about using the power of the arts to create collective meaning and engage in critical conversations. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Chelsea Hackett for her presentation, Speak Vocal Empowerment for Students and Educators. Let's give her a warm welcome, Chelsea. We're so thrilled to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always funny to hear how long those feel when they're not written. So thank you all for sitting with them. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. This is a presentation I love giving, and it's a topic I love talking about. I know not everybody will be in a place where you can do some moving or make noises, but if you are in a place, I invite you to do that now. And if not, maybe just keep some of these ideas for later when you're at home and feel a little bit more comfortable doing these exercises, because really the benefits come from this work when you get to vocalize it. And then we all get to hear each other making weird noises, and that's fun too. So like she said, my name is Chelsea Hackett. I'm currently a professor in working with our mass program here at CU, and I'm so excited to run this with you. So we'll skip over that for a second. First, I just want to go over what is Speak. It's an organization that I co-founded. We create curricula and we train educators and run direct programs, largely focusing on girls and young women, although we've expanded to also work with gender expansive youth. We draw from voice and speech pathology, performance, and participatory education for all of our approaches. And we believe that people have the power to change the world by exercising their civic voices. And our organization was co-founded by myself and Dr. Beth Osnes, who's a professor here at CU in the Department of Theater and Dance. And we've been working together to both collaboratively create these programs in conjunction with also our partners in Guatemala, who Erin mentioned. They're a school called Maya Impact. Really incredible school if you're interested in what it looks like to have a program run by Indigenous women for Indigenous girls. And we've co-worked with them to create our approach that's called vocal empowerment. The objectives of this workshop, we only have an hour together, but we're going to be looking at gaining some awareness around your physical voice. We're going to do some vocal exercises that you can do to warm up your voice physically. And then we'll also be looking at a practice of getting a little bit comfortable, getting uncomfortable to use your voice for advocacy. And I like to just say for expectations, we will have some Q&A time at the end, but definitely if something comes up, I know it's hard for me to remember for an hour, so feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll try to answer it if I can. Take care of yourselves. If we're doing physical exercises, you know your body better than I do, so do whatever works well for your body and your voice. And I ask that we speak from our own experiences. So we'll go ahead and start talking about what is vocal empowerment. So for us at Speak, and also in conjunction with our partners at Maya, we've defined vocal empowerment as the ability to use your voice effectively in any space. Along with that is the ability to advocate for yourself and others. And there's also this unspoken part of vocal empowerment, especially when we're thinking about when we have more power in a space, like if any of you are educators and working with young people or working with our students here on campus, a lot of knowing how to use your voice effectively is knowing when to step back and give space and listen to those around us. At Speak, our approach is evidence-based, meaning we've researched it and we've also worked with other researchers. And we look at really three aspects of voice. So a lot of times when you're thinking about like using your voice, oftentimes we think about that as the social emotional voice. So this idea that I have something to say and it matters. We like to also focus on the physical voice. So like literally, how does your body produce sound? How do you speak in a way that's healthy for your vocal folds? How to use your voice effectively? And then we also think about the civic voice. So this is the idea that when you're speaking, it's adding to larger conversations going on in your community that are relevant to the people around you. Those are always changing. And the idea that most of those conversations benefit by more voices being involved, including yours. Oh, sorry, I did skip that one. Apologies. So one of the other things that I think is interesting, can you just give me a wave if any of you are educators on our campus or in other capacities? Okay, a few people. So I just like to point out vocal fatigue. So vocal fatigue is like literally when your voice gets tired. It includes hoarseness, tiredness, muscle pains that you might feel in your larynx, and lost or cracked notes. And this can lead to long-term vocal damage. So we don't always think about, if you're not in a vocal profession like a singer or an actor, you might not always think about your voice as something that you have to take good care of. But educators, especially like lecturers, high school teachers, elementary school teachers, they are also considered vocal professionals because they're speaking all the time. So you want to be aware of this, and this is important for educators, especially because they tend to be speaking over competing noises like students, and have twice the voice, or have more than twice the voice problems than people in other professions have. And it also affects people of different genders differently. So folks who are assigned female at birth, because the vocal folds tend to be thinner and smaller, they tend to be more prone to vocal injury. So a lot of the physical stuff we're going to be talking about is really relevant for everybody, but especially for educators as you think about, you know, this is the way that you communicate your learning to your students. It's really important to take care of that and to take care of yourself. So just as a reminder, this session is meant for prevention and support. I am not a voice and speech pathologist, although I have learned a lot from folks in our department here. And it's not to be used as diagnostic tool for vocal injuries. And if you do think you might have vocal fatigue, or you saw that slide and were like, oh, I actually have that quite a bit, I recommend going to an ENT, and they can help direct you to a vocal therapist who can help you with more like tools to help care for it if you do have a vocal injury. And now we're going to get started. Sorry, my slides are not progressing as easily as I would like them to. So the first thing we're going to do is just a quick activity. I'm going to ask you if you have the capacity to type into the chat box. We're going to type in an answer of a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 is absolutely not, this is definitely not true for me. And 10 is absolutely yes, this is always true for me. And then you have the whole variety in between. And we're just going to do this just to kind of see where you're at today and where other folks might be at today. And we're going to look at what are some characteristics of an empowered voice. And these aren't defining you. Everybody has an empowered voice. It's just a matter of where you feel comfortable using it and where you don't feel comfortable using it. But this is a way to start to think about how are you feeling generally about your voice in terms of the social emotional voice. So the first statement is people can easily hear and understand my voice. So again, a 1 might be no, never, nobody can ever hear and understand my voice. A 10 might be yes, absolutely. People always hear and understand what I'm saying all the time. Okay, awesome. Seeing a lot of 7s, 8s, like 10. I actually would put myself at a 7 too, because I've had some vocal injuries. So sometimes I feel like I have to protect my voice and not speak loudly. Great. Okay, thank you. Our next one, I understand how my body creates my voice. So I understand like how the mechanics of voice work. Okay, cool. A little bit lower numbers. I even put myself at a 6 because I'm not a voice and speech pathologist. So I feel like there's always like room to grow and learn. Great. Okay. And as we continue to do this, just take note of where others are too. And also take note of, do you have other circumstances where you might answer this differently? I'm not ashamed to use my voice. So a 1 in this one, it's a little bit of a double negative, would be I am ashamed to use my voice. 1 would be I feel a lot of shame using my voice. A 10 would be I feel really comfortable. I don't feel shame using my voice. Okay, a little bit of variety. Great. And then our next one. My voice has the power to make a positive impact for my life. Cool. Lots of 8s, 9s. And then we'll make a little shift for this one. My voice has the power to make a positive impact for others. And if anybody is willing to come off of mute and share, I'd love to hear, especially if you had a different answer for this one than you did for the last one. What do you feel like is different about using your voice for yourself versus using it for others? Does anybody feel comfortable sharing that? Or even if you didn't make them differently, you can share. How did you assess those two?
Well, since I'm a teacher, I think that for me, those two questions are intertwined. And not only in a sense that I need to convey the information, but also set a model for young women to maybe speak confidently and sort of handle their space, keep their space.
Cool, thank you. And Erin?
Yeah, I really echo what Anastasia was saying. More generally too, I think as part of my job, it's part of my job to help empower other voices. So that's where the difference came in for me.
Okay, definitely. Did anybody put lower on for others than you did for yourself? Lisa, I'm seeing you shake your head. Do you feel comfortable speaking to where that difference might be for you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, I was on my phone on my way home earlier. So now I have a better setup. I would say oftentimes when I try to convey what I believe someone else's thoughts or feelings, attitudes or beliefs are for them, I don't do it perfectly. You know, I think it's something gets lost in the translation. So I think in general, it's better to hear directly from a specific individual what their own feelings or thoughts are.
Great, thank you. When I run this set of statements too with larger groups, I've done it with students and with other teachers, I often like to kind of evaluate each of these questions in this way, because oftentimes people will have different qualitative reasons for why they've answered 1 to 10 on this. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Lisa and Anastasia, is that right? It's great to hear kind of the variety of how we're thinking about this. Also on that note, I'd love for everybody to just think for a second and type in one word or short phrase so we can start to define for ourselves here in this room today, this virtual room. What is one word or short phrase that you would use to define your own empowered voice? And when I share this with students, I think about like, what's the feeling of your voice when you're the most comfortable sharing, when you're like in that setting where you feel like you can share and be heard and communicate in the way that feels like the most you. So what are some words or a short phrase that you would use to define that type of voice? I'm seeing freedom, strong and smooth. I put easy, community, strong, honest, strong and authentic, calm, authentic, voice low and resonant, speech tempo, confident to speak slowly and hold pauses, grounding and steady, and sense of safety. Thank you. So we're really getting kind of like a wide picture of that physical voice, maybe some of the tonality or sound or quality, but also there's a lot of that emotional, how are you feeling when you're speaking in those spaces? And then just to start to think, we often call this the news story. So it's kind of like, what are we aiming towards of how do we want our voice to be in all of those difficult spaces? So I want us to think too of what's the current story? Where might you feel uncomfortable speaking with your voice? And what does that feel like in your body? What are the qualities of your voice when you're in spaces that make you feel disempowered? So I ask everybody to type in one short word or phrase. Okay, I'm seeing shaky, quiet, constriction, nervous, too fast, high tone, constricted, tightness, fear, fearful, soft talking. Okay, so I think it's helpful just to identify what are the parts of your own voice that, what does it feel like when your own voice feels disempowered? And then what does it feel like when your own voice feels empowered? Because often what we talk about in our program is nobody's giving you an empowered voice. It's really about you have that voice inside of you always. It's more so identifying what are the circumstances where it's hard to access that voice and how can you do some practices to start to access that voice more easily. And especially when I'm thinking about working with educators, thinking about students, it's also thinking, how can I create spaces where my students can more easily access that version of their own voice that's more empowered? Because often we don't always have the power as individuals to change the circumstance. But as educators, we have more power about how we're shaping our classrooms and how inviting that is to our students' voices. Okay, so thanks for looking a bit at our social emotional voice. We're going to take a bit of a turn now, and we're going to do some exercises to look at your physical voice. I just want to preface this again by saying I am not a voice and speech pathologist, and there is this aspect that we've looked at. I think in voice and speech pathology, we've been told by our friends, our partners there, is a little bit simplistic. So please don't take this and then decide to diagnose yourself on things. But I think it's a very easy way to break down an understanding of how your body makes sound and also how you can support your body in making sound in a healthy way and also moving through some of those nerves or whatever's coming up that's keeping you from accessing that fully empowered voice. So we'll start here with this diagram. And again, it's relatively simplistic, but we like to break the voice down into 3 parts to understand how our body produces sound. So we have down here the power of your voice, and this comes from your lungs. And then this little line down here is, hopefully you can see it, is your diaphragm. Oops, sorry. Then the source is your larynx and your vocal folds. You've probably at some point heard them called your vocal cords, but they got a rebrand at some point in the last few years. So now they're called your vocal folds. And then we have the filter, and the filter is your mouth, your teeth, your tongue, all of your nasal cavities, everything that kind of shapes the sound coming out of your body. So we're first going to look a little bit at the power of our voice, because that's where everything comes from. It starts and originates with our breath and with our lungs and our diaphragm. So I am going to show you a video that the next few videos do involve some body stuff. So if you're a little squeamish about that, just a fair warning.
The primary muscle of respiration is the diaphragm.
Can everyone hear that? Yeah, okay, great.
The diaphragm is a thin, dome-shaped layer of muscle and tendon that separates the abdominal cavity from the chest cavity. It gains its shape from its attachments and from the organs that surround it, especially the heart, lungs, and liver. The diaphragm attaches at the costals along the lower rib cage, high in the front at the sternum, and deeply in the back along the spine. The diaphragm also attaches to itself via a central tendon, making the diaphragm one of the unique muscles of the body. The diaphragm uses its central tendon and its attachments as leverage to flatten during inhalation. The expansion of the ribs comes from the resistance of the internal organs to downward movement. As the internal organs are slow to move, the ribs expand to make room for the lungs. While the diaphragm attaches at the bottom of the ribs, its range of motion never reaches that low in the body. As seen from below, we get a sense of the full range of motion of the diaphragm as it would glide over the aorta, the vena cava, the esophagus, and the internal organs.
Okay, that's as far as we're going to go on that video. So as we look back at the power and the diaphragm, one of the best ways we can connect with our voice is really just getting a deeper connection with your breath. So I'm going to scoot back and we're going to do a couple exercises. Again, if you're in a space where you can do them, I invite you to do them. If not, bank it and do it later when you're at home. So the first is you're just going to sit comfortably in your chair. I like to think of having both feet on the floor, and then you might even roll your shoulders back. And the first thing we're going to do is just put your hands either right around or right below your belly button, and just start to breathe in and imagine that you're pushing out your belly button as you breathe in. Another visual that might help is thinking of your pelvic bowl as filling up with air, as though that air is water. So as you breathe in, you're filling up your pelvis with water. And then we're going to feel the contraction of our diaphragm and how it moves our organs down to make more space for the lungs. We're going to do that by going ha, 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 ha. And you'll probably feel your stomach going in and out pretty quickly with that movement. That's usually what we can feel, it almost contracting really quickly. The other thing we want to think about when we're thinking about our diaphragm is it contributes to voice control or breath control. So oftentimes if you have been in a choir or you've been in a singing scenario, you might have heard people talk about breath control. If you get nervous and you find that you like run out of air at the end of your sentence, breath control might be something that helps you with that. So one way we can think about breath control is it's about how slowly are you releasing the air out of your lungs as you speak. And it's also about how deeply are you breathing to begin with. So one way to think about breath control is I take a deep breath in, and then I release it on an E sound. And I think about a balloon slowly releasing air versus just letting the balloon go. So it goes like this. And then you go as long as you can or as long as you want. So let's all try it together if you can. If you are not in a space where you feel like you can do an E sound, you can release it on a nice long shh sound. It'll be harder to hold for as long, but it'll still give you that sense of like slowly releasing the air out of your lungs. Okay, so let's all take a deep breath. So doing that a few times and doing a couple of those ha, ha, ha can give you some access to your breath and breath control and just start to remind your body of how it naturally breathes. If any of you have young like toddlers or babies in your life, I really invite you to watch how they breathe because they have these like luscious bellies that fill up with air. They're not constricted by tight jeans or this feeling of like sucking things in or the tension that we feel in our bodies or holding your shoulders up. Or oftentimes when I ask students to take a deep breath, they go like this. We have this idea of taking a deep breath means like lifting your shoulders. Just watch a baby for a few minutes and see how they're breathing, because it's really natural for your body to want to use your diaphragm to effectively expand the space in your chest cavity for your lungs. So it's just about going back to that. Another thing I'd like to teach that you've probably come across, but it's a good reminder, is box breathing, just because a lot of what our breath does for us is to help calm down our nervous system. And box breathing, one, it's going to help you a little bit with breath control, but it's also just a good reminder of your brain of like, okay, we're calm, we're safe, we're going to calm down. So the way that box breathing works, Shayna, love that you already know it and you love it. Okay, I like to start with drawing a literal box, and then you can stop doing that part. But you'll start by drawing a line up as you take a deep breath in for a count of 4. So, and then you're going to hold it for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 as you draw over. I guess I'm drawing out of the picture. And then you're going to release it for 4. So draw down. And then hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go together. Up, inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. And now without the arm, inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. And now everyone do it at your own pace. Okay, so that is how we connect with the power. Again, all of your voice comes from and starts with your breathing and your breath. So if all you get from this is just to remember to take a few deep, calming breaths before you go into those spaces where you feel disempowered in your voice, that's going to be enough. The next part we're going to look at is the source. Again, this one is not computer generated. This is a real video. So if you get squeamish with body stuff, now would be the time to look away from your screen. Give me a second.
Well, I particularly like this video because you can see that my vocal folds are sitting on top of my airway. You can see my tracheal rings. And the first thing you see me doing is closing my vocal folds to make sound. And when the vocal folds close and air goes through them, you can see that they vibrate. I will run out of air and you can see that I open them up again. And then I go and make a sound at a slightly lower pitch, and then you can see my vocal folds are slightly shorter because the pitch is lower. You can appreciate that the vocal folds have a nice floppy skin on them as they vibrate. That helps with good sound. And as I go up in pitch, you can see that my vocal folds are stretching out.
Okay, give me a wave if you've seen vocal folds in action before. A couple people have seen them, maybe not. Okay, so how they got this video, having had it done, it is very uncomfortable. They take a cord, a tube, with a camera on the end, and they string it up your nose past that point where they do the COVID test, and then it goes down the back of your throat. So what we're seeing, the angle that we're seeing is actually pointed down the back of the throat into the trachea. So the part that she's talking about, can you see my mouse? Okay, so these little white parts, the floppier skin, as she refers to it, that is the vocal fold. Let me try to move it back a little bit. Yeah, so these are the vocal folds right here. When you're breathing, everybody can just put your arms out like this if you can. This is what they're doing when you're breathing. They're just open. And then whenever you're making sound, if you were to slow this video down, they do this vibration like this. You can do it with me. And basically, sound is waves in the air. And the way that we make sound is we create vibrations in the air that's coming out of our lungs. And we do that by moving our vocal folds together. So a couple things about vocal injury. If you are sick, oftentimes what's going to happen is you'll get a lot of inflammation around your vocal folds and in your larynx. So these are already going to be pretty red and tender, and they're going to be more vulnerable to injury. If you are an educator or somebody who's using your voice all the time, you don't just have to be an educator. If you're speaking all the time, you might end up getting a lot of vocal fatigue. So these muscles might be getting tired. Also, if you've ever had to yell over a group of students or yell for your child or yell for the CU Buffs at the game, oftentimes when we're yelling, what's happening is we're slamming our vocal folds together, and that can cause vocal injury through, you can have what's called a node, and that's a little bit less serious. Oftentimes those will go away on their own. It's a little bump that'll grow on there. And then the more serious version is a polyp. And a polyp is not going to go away quite as easily. And that'll be more of like a permanent sac of fluid that's going to be on your vocal folds. And what that causes is hoarseness. Because if you imagine if there's a bump here, it's not going to be able to close and create as much of a clear seal. So you're going to have some breathiness coming out of the vocal folds. The most extreme version, which I hope none of us ever experience, is a vocal hemorrhage. And that's when you have a hemorrhage and a broken blood vessel happen. And that's a pretty serious like emergency in terms of vocal health. You might have heard of like Adele or Julie Andrews or more famous singers having vocal injury where they have to get surgery or they go on really extreme vocal rest. Typically that's typically from a hemorrhage. But they're not the only people who can get those injuries. Educators get them as well. So we're not necessarily teaching in elementary school environments, but when I talk to elementary school teachers, it's really encouraging you to use like hand symbols or things to get people's attention instead of trying to yell over people. General vocal health tips. This really likes to be moist. So drink lots of water. Caffeine and alcohol are going to dry out your vocal folds, as is anything that's going into your lungs in terms of smoke is going to go past your vocal folds. Screaming at a game is going to cause some damage and tiredness. Also coughing, which is unfortunate because you can't always control it. But when you cough, they slam together as well. So one thing you can do when you have the urge to cough is try to swallow. So try to take a sip of water, a small sip, and swallow instead of coughing. The other thing is really being attentive to not talking through sickness, because like I said, when you have some of that inflammation already in your vocal folds, they're more prone to injury. And yeah, and then also just taking good care of yourself. Like a lot of what can happen too is you can have some tension in your larynx and in your throat. And that can come from just being really tense in your own life, having, tight shoulders, having a tight neck. So the more that we think about relaxation, the more you're going to be able to take good care of your voice as well. One thing I like to do is just if you're comfortable with it, have you put your hands on the side of your neck so that you can feel the vibration as you speak. So you might just say out loud what you had for breakfast. I had a smoothie. It was delicious. And then another thing that I think is fun, just because bodies are cool, is to learn how our vocal folds make higher and lower pitch. So if you go, ooh, you might feel some movement in your throat. And what's happening, and she pointed to this a little bit, your vocal folds are contracting and expanding, and it's creating either thicker or thinner, like skin there. It's not the right word, but tissue. Thank you. Thicker or thinner tissue. So if you think about if you play a string instrument, your higher pitch sounds are going to be the thinner of the chords of the strings, and your lower pitch sounds are going to be the thicker ones. This is also why folks who are assigned female at birth tend to have higher pitch voices. It's because we have smaller vocal folds. They tend to be around the size of a dime. And people who are assigned male at birth tend to have vocal folds around the size of a nickel. And that thickness is also what protects them a little bit more from vocal injury. So folks assigned female at birth do tend to have more vulnerability to vocal injury just because of the thinness of the tissue. Okay, that is your source. So we had our power, which was our breath and everything involved in the mechanism of our breath, and then the source. And then we have our filter. So the filter, if you didn't have the filter, everything that came out would just be like, oh, we could only make one sound, really. The filter is what shapes it into language. So I like to do ma, pa, ma, pa. And there you'll feel that what's filtering the sound, your lips are touching, ma, pa. And it's actually the same gesture, the same like mouth shape for both of those sounds. Just one is a more sustained sound. You could do that forever. And pa is a more explosive sound. So we're kind of pushing the air through more quickly. Another thing to feel is ta, 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 and tha, tha, tha. So again, ta is more explosive. You can't like hold that sound for very long. It's a little difficult to hold a the, but you can hold it more. It's a more sustained sound than a ta. I think one of the most important things to know for your vocal health and for speaking in a really full and supported voice is actually about our soft palate. So the soft palate, if you were to trace your tongue back on the top of your mouth, you have your hard palate, which sits behind your front teeth. And then eventually there stops being bone behind it. And that's where your soft palate starts. And your soft palate can kind of lift up and down. And I like to think of it like the acoustic center of your mouth. So it's going to help you to have a bigger sound without needing more air or needing more force coming out of your voice. So one really easy way to access our soft palate lifting is to yawn. So we're all going to just go, and it's almost 4 o'clock, so it's a good time to be yawning anyways. And one vocal exercise that we do to support the yawn is we just start to go, oh, ooh. So you do your vowel sounds with the yawn, and then you start to transition to using some consonants. So you can go T, te, ta, to, tu. And then we'll do P, pe, papo, poo, which is always a fan amongst my elementary school students. P, pe, papo, poo. And then finally, mi, me, ma, mo, mu. Mi, me, ma, mo, mu. Okay. So if you're even just thinking about that yawn, and I keep doing this because it's really what it's doing is it's lifting that soft palate and creating more of an echoey space for the sound to bounce around inside of your mouth and come out louder. Another way to just feel this really directly is with how widely your mouth is open. You can hear the difference between like the acoustics of your mouth. So you might just go, And even without changing the amount of effort, having your mouth open wider makes the sound louder. Same idea, more space with a lifted palate is going to make you louder without more force. Okay. So that is, oh, I forgot to show you our video of our filter. Sorry, let me show you the video of the filter now. Was the order of those? No, it wasn't. It was more so just practicing different consonant sounds. Because oftentimes when we're doing vocal exercises, you want to move. It's kind of like, I like to think of it like if you're drilling for basketball, you're going to do like a million of the same shots so that when you're actually in the game and you're in a more high pressure environment, you can access that muscle memory without having to think about it. Same thing with vocal exercises. You're going to just start to get the shape and the idea drilled into your head with all of the consonants so that when you actually start speaking, you don't have to think about it too hard. I'm going to show you our video. There's no sound on this, so it's not your computer if you don't hear sound. But this is somebody speaking. And I think it's really cool to see just how much goes into your voice when you're speaking. So I feel like some people here might get the reference of flubber, which is what I always think this looks like. But that's your tongue, and your tongue is doing a lot of work all the time to make sure that your sound comes out. Back here, that's your soft palate. So you can see it lifting. And then these spaces up here are your sinus cavities where you're going to have more resonance. So you might like feel your voice is different when your nose is clogged. And then you can see like your lips are touching together and the tongue is going to be touching the back of the teeth. It might touch the top of the hard palate and soft palate. And all of that is shaping the sound as it comes out of your mouth. Okay, so now we're going to do a rapid fire of a few different exercises that you could do every day. I don't expect all of you to do these with me, but I will show you them standing up. And if you have the gusto to stand up and do them with me, I think that would be great. So these are a series of vocal exercises. These ones are sequenced a bit intentionally to first relax the body and then practice expansion of sound and then practice moving towards everyday speech. So these ones are in an intentional sequence. I'll just show you them, and if you feel comfortable doing them with me, you are welcome to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a shake with an ah. So for this, I literally just move my feet up and down. I let my arms hang by my side, and I go, ah, ah. Okay, this one is a little bit trickier. Really be mindful of your own body with this one. This is a up and down the spine. So I start by bending my knees, which you kind of can't see. And then I allow my head to drop and my chin to touch my chest. And then one vertebrae at a time, I roll down until I get to the comfortable bottom for me. And I let my head hang. And then I go, oh. And then I'm going to come back up the same way I came. So my head is the very last thing to come back up. And then I'm going to roll my shoulders back. So the most important thing about this is not creating more tension when you do it. So it's really about going down one vertebrae at a time and allowing the weight of your head to continue to pull down your spine as you come up. Then we have what we call stand happy. We stopped calling this posture because when we called it posture, people like put their body in weird tension. So stand happy is really just allowing your body to be in alignment. I like to think of my legs hanging directly beneath my hip bones. So you might just put your fists on wherever your hip bones are, and then allowing your feet to be that hip width distance apart. I like to roll my shoulders back, have a little micro bend in your knees. And then you can just think that your head is a helium balloon and it's just sort of floating on top of your spine. Okay, Now, relaxed jaw, I rub the heels of my hands together until they start to get warm. So our jaw muscles, as you saw in that video, your mouth is doing a lot of work to speak all day. So we don't really want to rub too much on our jaw because they're pretty like tender muscles. But if you just heat up your hands and then you start up where your ears connect to your face, then you're going to just drag your hands down slowly and allow your feathers or your fingers to feel like feathers, sort of just brushing against your face. And again, there's not too much manipulation of the muscle. It's really more so just reminding the muscle to relax. Okay, I'm going to skip this one for time because we did it all together. But the next one we would do is our yawn and stretch. So again, that's where you'd go through the and then you'd go through your consonants. And then we like to end with these 3 separate arm circles. You might be wondering, like, do the arm circles matter for the voice? Not really, but because we've historically done this work with young women and girls and folks who are coming from historically marginalized communities, it's a really good practice to allow your body to take up space, because oftentimes young women, people who come from marginalized communities, are told to be smaller and take up less space. And so it's a physical reminder that you are allowed to take up space in a room. Your voice is allowed to take up space in conversations. And to physically allow yourself to be bigger than you're used to being is a really great practice. So for this last one, we're going to start by circling our arms up high. And I'm going to start by going, ah. And then I'll go forward. Ah. And then if you have the space, you can go down as well. Ah. Now this next one is a reminder to access your diaphragm. So we'll go shh. And then shh. And then shh. And then here's where we're going to connect to daily speech. Again, it's all about like accessing these skills during that basketball game, during the high stakes environment. So you're going to end with a short word or phrase that you say every day, and you're going to make the circle around your body. And on one breath, you're going to repeat that short word or phrase as many times as you can. So for me, I have 2 dogs. So short phrase I say all the time is, okay, go potty. So I'm going to say that as many times as I possibly can with a supported voice. So I don't want to run out of air at the end. So think of your short phrase. Sometimes if you're in a space where you can say a nice affirmation to yourself, I think that's nice to do too. So maybe instead of saying, okay, go potty today, I'll say, I have a strong voice, or I can speak my mind. So think of something nice you want to hear for yourself, and you'll just repeat it as many times as you can. So I can speak my mind. 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 My feelings are valid. My feelings are valid. My feelings are valid. My feelings are valid. I can speak my mind. My feelings are valid. I can speak my mind. My feelings are valid. Okay, so those are our vocal exercises. There's a ton of variety if you want to look up other vocal exercises online. I think it's really just about getting that practice of relaxation, connection with breath, and connection with your full body, and allowing your full body to be involved in your voice. Because it really is like, if you're feeling tension in other parts of your body, it's going to affect your voice. Okay, we're getting close to the end, but I'd like us to just do one last activity. And this is about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I say this because this is probably, after years of doing this work with young women and girls in all different types of areas of civic engagement. We've done it around climate justice. We've done it around preventing and disrupting microaggressions. We've done it around preventing sexual violence, all types of areas. What I found over and over again is when you're trying to change civic issues, the biggest thing is getting comfortable with discomfort. That's also a really great practice with the vocal exercises because they're kind of weird and they're kind of uncomfortable and they might be out of your norm. But more and more when I do activities with my students, I often bring in theater games or things to do that kind of get you out of your comfort zone because discomfort is a muscle. And if you want to be working towards social change, you have to move out of what's comfortable because that's what's known and what's normal. So we're going to get a little bit uncomfortable and we're going to do what we call a vocal declaration. Oops, sorry. Oh, actually, we'll do this real quick too. We'll start with our frozen image of vocal empowerment. So on the count of 3, I'm going to ask everybody to make a quick statue, just a frozen picture of what it means to you to have an empowered voice. Okay, so on the count of 3, everybody think of it in your head. 1, 2, 3, image. And take a look around at all those beautiful statues. Okay, you can relax. And then now we'll go one step forward or further. And I just want you to get a little bit uncomfortable sharing with this community your vocal declaration. I don't think we have time for everybody to do it out loud, unfortunately, but I'm going to ask you all to type it into the chat box. And if you have someone in your life who you feel like would be a good listener to this vocal declaration, I really encourage you to say it out loud because it's helpful for any sort of social change. Accountability and saying things out loud can oftentimes hold us accountable to what we want to change in. So you're going to finish this sentence. My name is, my voice is important to me because, and one thing I care about in my community is, and for the sake of typing, you can just do the ends of the sentences if you want to. And go ahead and take a look at the others as they're coming in. See all of the, oh, I love seeing what people care about. Helping cats, so cool. Speaking for those who don't feel safe speaking. Connection, I love my voice because it's wise, so beautiful. Communication drives relationships. I care about our running groups. I want to help myself feel empowered and less marginalized. I care, or my voice elicits change. I care about our employees. This is beautiful. Oh, there's a kitty. Okay, and please just give yourself a little pat on the back for sharing something a little bit vulnerable with a community that you may or may not know folks here. That's always a great practice. And I want to thank all of you for being vulnerable and sharing your vocal declarations. And I invite you to continue practicing discomfort throughout your day as you support yourself and as you support your students here on campus. And at this point, that's most of what I have to share with you. So I want to open it up to questions. Please don't feel like you have to only raise a virtual hand. I love hearing your voices. So if you feel comfortable raising hand and then coming off of mute, that would be awesome. And I'm going to stop share so we can see each other all.
Raised hands and questions are coming in. Let's give a big round of applause to Chelsea. I loved it. Loved it. I feel so much better. I don't know about the rest of you, but yeah. But we do have a couple more minutes, so let's see.
Yeah, any questions or things you want to share? No problem, Shayna. Thanks for coming. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no questions, that's great. I did my job well. Oh, go for it.
I'll ask a question. Chelsea, thank you so much for a wonderful workshop. If you were to name 3 easy exercises that people could do right before going into a classroom or into public speaking, setting, what would you recommend us to do?
Okay, I didn't teach this one, but it is my absolute favorite. If you take a straw and you have water, you don't have to do it with water, you can do it without, but it's more fun when you blow bubbles. But you go up and down, so you go ooh, through the straw. And I believe it's called ablative exercise, but what it does is having the pressure come back, it actually really relaxes your throat. So that'll relax your vocal folds. The other thing, I think anything related to box breathing or whatever is going to really help you access like relaxation and calm and kind of calming your whole nervous system down. I think that's really important. And then sometimes just articulation exercises, because it's easy, especially when you're nervous, to get like kind of mushy with your speech. So like ma, pa, ta, tha, just doing anything to kind of warm up your voice. But really, I think it's like breath and feeling calm and confident in yourself. And then I love the straw one for myself personally. Cool. If you're interested in this, I'll just type in because or here, let me share. One more time, I'll put up our website because we do have our free curriculum that has a lot of these exercises at speak.world. And also, if you happen to work with young folks or you want to bring any of these into your classroom, all the lesson plans are free on there as well because we are all about open source. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful to you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all for coming.
Chelsea, thank you so much. I hope you're monitoring the chat. Lots of love coming your way.
Yes,
We will post this to the Let's CU Well website. So if you want to check it out and practice with the recording, that will be available in just a couple of days. A big bow of gratitude to all the participants, but most especially Chelsea. Thank you so much today. I loved it. I feel so much better. I'm going to practice all this stuff.
Well, thank you all. And thank you all for doing the exercises. I saw you out there. I really appreciated it. Okay,
All right,
everybody, have a
see
great rest
everyone.
of your day.